Chapter 33. What's happening? Please tell me. Please? Tragan gave an irritated shake of his head, and then relented. Nothing very much, he said. They're slowly circling each other. I can't think why Jenhegger doesn't attack. One stroke would do it. Sarah's anguish was such that she could hardly bear to listen. She wanted to know, but dreaded to hear. Where was the Brigadier? Had he heard her plea for help? And even if he came to the rescue, how could he be in time to save the doctor? They're speaking to each other again. I can't hear what they're saying. I'll switch to the Jenhegger channel. It's a pity the chairman didn't see fit to implant transmission needles in your friend. I should have enjoyed experiencing his death. Ah, that's better. And to Sarah's chagrin, he lapsed into his former absorbed silence. Come and fight, coward. Come and taste Jenhegger's sword. Or are you too terrified? Jenhegger had never encountered an opponent like this. Why did he not seem frightened? His air of confidence, the aura of skill which surrounded him, quite confounded the gladiator. It may be your custom to taunt one another before engaging, replied the doctor, but I can see very little advantage to you on this occasion. Why was he not afraid? Why should I be afraid? The doctor said, as if he had read the other's mind. When I stepped out here, my life ended. If I return alive, I shall be returning from the dead. He was just trying to confuse him by talking nonsense. Enough! You talk too much. So I have been told. Die then. At last, Jenhegger attacked. Charging towards the doctor with an inarticulate battle cry of frustration and rage, he swung his sword to the side in anticipation of his famed decapitation blow. But when he delivered it, somehow the doctor was no longer there to be decapitated. He had stepped to one side the better to help Jenhegger on his way, and with a cry of "Hi!" and a twist of his hand, he achieved his aim. Jenhegger flew through the air and landed with a heavy thump on the edge of the platform. He scrambled to his feet and turned quickly, bracing himself to take the certain attempt to topple him over into the pit, and saw the doctor quietly watching him, his hands by his side, for all the world like a casual bystander, rather than a participant in a fight to the death. His vision blurred momentarily as the fury rose thickly in his throat. For that alone I'll kill you, he snarled, and once again he charged, and once again found that he was charging the empty air. Stand still and fight like a man, he roared. Changing his tactics, he advanced on the doctor with his sword arm windmilling round, up, down, across, in the attack which had been known to dismember an opponent so fast that he fell instantly, sliced into several discrete pieces. Thank you for your kind invitation, said the doctor, bending and swaying and jumping as the heavy blade whistled past. Please forgive me if I don't... Oh, well done. That was a beauty, he added, as an overhead cut missed him by a hair and thudded deep into the wooden floor. He couldn't last much longer, surely, and there was no sign of the Brigadier. It must be that he hadn't got her message. Sarah, wound up to a pitch of irrational desperation that would have taken her over the top at the Somme screaming defiance, found her mind working at lightning speed. There was only one thing to do. Get up there while the doctor was still holding out and somehow create a diversion. But that meant escaping now, right now. Of course. She'd seen the blow on the back of the neck which Anya had used to lay out the guard, and Tragan was in the ideal position, leaning forward slightly in the intensity of his concentration. She looked round for something to use as a weapon. Nothing. Anya had just used her hand. She stood up, but in spite of being blinded by the headset, somehow he sensed her movement. Sit down, Miss Smith, What's going on? Still moving forward. Let me see. Oh, please let me see. He grunted. His face was no longer off-white, and as she got nearer, she could see the little pimples which peppered the larger blisters. Ah, he suddenly said. He nearly lost a foot. Good, good. If he hadn't. Now! With all the strength of her insane courage, she brought down her clasped fists on the exact spot at the base of Tragan's skull. But instead of obediently collapsing on the floor, he leapt to his feet, tore off the headset, and seized her by the arms. "You little vixen," he hissed, his swollen face inches from hers. Dragging her across to the wall, he snapped the manacles hanging there onto her wrists. "No more fun," he snarled, pulling a multi-tailed whip from the rack. "It's time you were taught a lesson." He drew back his arm, and dropped it again as a confused shouting and the squawk of stun guns came from outside. The whip fell to the floor, and Tragan went for the missile projector in the holster at his side, even as the door flew open and the Brigadier appeared, stun gun raised, and was stopped in his tracks by the sight in front of him. For Tragan had his gun pointing not at the Brigadier, but straight at Sarah's head. The clatter of boots behind the Brigadier died away as his backup arrived and took in the situation. For a moment there was silence. Then the Brigadier spoke quietly. "Don't be a fool, Tragan," he said. "You haven't a hope. Give up, and I'll make sure that you get a fair trial." "You don't understand, Brigadier," he replied. "I am a Naglon. Imprisonment means death for a Naglon. You may kill me if you wish, but first I shall have the satisfaction of blowing Miss Sarah Jane Smith's head off." His face, a deep muddy purple, was swelling alarmingly into ballooning hemispheres. He raised the gun, and the two doors behind him burst open. He spun round to receive the full blast of Rance's and Ungar's stun guns. The missile launcher clattered to the floor. Tragan's knees gave way, and he sagged to the floor. Sarah could see his eyes, wide open, staring at her without expression, but clearly still seeing. As she watched his face, which by now was almost black in the intensity of its colour, the swellings were becoming so large they were merging one into another, and yet still they grew, until his eyes were hidden from sight. Surely his face must burst. And so it did, not with a bang, not with an explosion which splattered the walls, but with a juicy burp, a whoopee-cushion raspberry, a despairing fart, which slopped his purple lifeblood onto the bare stone floor, still stained with the blood of so many of his victims. Jeremy, peering over the heads of the group behind the Brigadier, reckoned it was probably okay to go in now. As he sidled through the door, he saw Rance signalling to his men to remove the body. The Brigadier had turned to Sarah. "Are you all right?" Yes, but we'll soon have you out of those things. Never mind about me. Jeremy, see what's happening to the doctor." "What?" "The ER set, there on the floor." He picked it up and shoved it on, and immediately found himself in the middle of a hand-to-hand fight with, of all people, the doctor. "Well, what's going on?" He tried to tell them as well as concentrate on the fight. It was funny, but though he didn't want to hurt the doctor, he couldn't not do his best to spifflicate him. "Jeremy!" "He's twisting my wrist, and I've dropped my sword, and I've thrown him off, and... oh no! The doctor has fallen off the edge. He was hanging on by his fingertips." Jeremy walked slowly over, listening to the astonishing roar of the audience, which was so loud it had stopped being a sound. It was just an intense sensation in the ears, like a pain that didn't hurt. "For God's sake, Jeremy!" "Sorry, There's an enormous frog thingy jumping up and trying to grab his legs, and—" He lifted his foot to push the doctor's fingers off the edge, but the doctor heaved himself up with one hand and grabbed his ankle with the other. Over the crowd he could hear a voice he seemed to recognize shouting, "Finish him off, Jenhegger." The doctor was climbing up his leg, and he, the fighter chappie rather, was trying to shake him off and— "Switch channels!" "What?" "Give it to me." The helmet was snatched from his head, and with a sort of a bump he was back in the cell place. "Doctor's rolling away from him and going for the sword," Sarah said urgently. "He's got it, and the gladiator is right on the edge and about to go over, and the doctor is rushing across, and he's grabbed his hand and he's pulled him back. The doctor's saved his life." Even over the thunder of the crowd, Freeth's scream of rage could be heard. He turned to the guard standing next to him. "Shoot him!" he cried. "Shoot them both!" But even as the man raised his gun, a voice boomed through the stadium, quietening the clamour and halting the guard. "No! The killing will stop. I, your president, order it." Unnoticed, the double doors had opened behind Freeth, and the president's wheelchair had appeared, pushed by Onya Farjan. The president spoke again into the microphone in his hand. "Doctor, Jenhegger, your fight is at an end." By the grumbling groundswell, it was clear the audience was not pleased. But it was their beloved president who had spoken. There would be no trouble. By now, the two combatants were walking back along the catwalk. As Jenhegger opened the gate into the presidential box, he turned back to the doctor. "You could have killed me," he said, trying to understand. "Why didn't you kill me?" The doctor smiled. "My dear fellow," he replied, "what possible reason could I have for doing such a thing?" They were greeted by Onya. "Are you all right, doctor?" she said. "A little puffed, I must admit," he answered. The president wheeled himself forward. "I am a blind and foolish old man, doctor. Can you ever forgive me?" The doctor nodded. "The past is dead, President, and I am still alive." "But not for long, doctor." The rolling tones of Chairman Freeth had completely lost their teasing, bantering note. His voice was sharp, decisive, vicious. "No, Balog," said the president, quavering with the effort of resumed authority. "As long as I am president of the world and of the corporation, there will be no more." But his son rode over the old man, with all the callousness and cruelty he had for so long contrived to conceal. "Hold your tongue," he said. "You are a foolish, blind old man. It's time you opened your eyes. You are not in charge any more. I am. Stand out of the way, everybody." And he snatched the gun from the guard and aimed it at the doctor. "Goodbye," he said. But before he had time to pull the trigger, the weapon was dashed from his hands. "No!" cried Jenhegger. "You shall not. He is a good man." Picking up the great body as if it were stuffed with feathers, he lifted it high above his head. Freeth was screaming in a paroxysm of terror and squirming in the big man's grip like a prime codfish about to be gutted. With one stride, Jenhegger carried him to the rail of the president's box and pitched him over the edge into the depths of the pit. "President, don't look!" cried Onya, over the gleeful croaking roars and the hog-killing squeals coming from below. "I have turned away my face too many times," answered the president. "If I had not, I might still have a son." The squealing stopped. The great butcher toad was not to be cheated of his dinner after all. Sarah sat in the high-backed tapestry chair which the others had insisted she should take, rather than the rickety old deck chairs also on offer, and tried not to listen to the Brigadier and Jeremy behind her, sopping arcane male anecdotes about life at Holborough, and wondered briefly what it must be like at public school. A cross between a high-security jail and a kindergarten, judging by the sound of it. The Doctor's head was hidden underneath the TARDIS console. Occasional grunts and imprecations were the only indications of the progress of his repairs. It was when it became clear that they were going to be stuck in the time vortex for some while that he had rather grumpily found something for them to sit on. Ought she to be afraid that they would never get back to Earth? Maybe. Yet it felt so safe to be in the TARDIS with the Doctor, especially after all the really scary things she'd encountered during the last few days. Only a few days? Ridiculous! It seemed that she was leaving a large part of her life behind on Parakan. I left my heart in San Francisco. The song lilted through her mind. God help us, she thought. I even feel in clichés. It was no good. She couldn't keep Waldo out of her mind forever, and though the pain of her grief wasn't extinguished, it was cushioned by the clear knowledge that the world could still be joyful. The memory of how the weight of fear fell away when the Doctor was saved and all was well, all was very well, rang through her like a peal of triumphant bells. And what had Jeremy said that other time? Life must go on. That's what he would have wanted. She got out of her regal chair and went over to address the feet sticking out from under the console. Doctor, she said, where'd you keep your teapot? I could murder a cup of tea.